we will find a path, or we will create one.
Elephants remain the largest land mammals today. Behind their imposing size hides a fascinating and intelligent creature. While early interactions with humans were based on mistrust and even fear due to the potential danger caused by the pachyderm, over time the elephant became a great ally. They play a crucial role in surveying and mapping paths through wild forests, allowing future generations to use these routes for transhumance. These royal ways serve as pathways for humans, enabling them to overcome the natural barriers of dark and unknown jungles. According to Dan Kuhl, a renowned elephant expert in Europe, and Eric Sigliano's studies, it is theorized that these paths have facilitated the migration of Homo ninis, great apes, and the Homo genre out of Africa's primary forests to reach the savanna and conquer the world. Today, two main species exist: the Asian elephant, formerly known as the Indian elephant, and the African elephant. The African species further separates into elephants from the savanna and those from the forest. Both the African and Asian elephant species can be distinguished by anatomical characteristics.
African elephants are quite different. First, in terms of size, the African elephant is larger and has a sloping forehead, while the Asian elephant has a straight forehead with two bumps on the top of its skull. The African elephant also has two fingers at the end of its trunk, while the Asian elephant has only one. The African bush elephant is an animal that is much more exposed to the sun, and as the elephant cools his blood with all the small veins in its ears, it therefore has much larger ears. Remember for the older ones that mammoths had very small ears because they lived in cool areas, so the elephant's ears are directly related to its location and habitat. Other differences between Asian and African elephants are that Asian elephants have rounded backs. African elephants have hollows in the middle of their backs, and they also have different numbers of toenails. African elephants have slightly grainier skin, while Asian elephants have smoother skin. It would seem that African elephants are more interested in food. In fact, the elephant is angry and wants to kill you. But when you take out some bananas, eating bananas, it forgets that it wanted to kill you. Whereas the Asian elephant will kill you and then eat the bananas. So they are extremely sensitive animals. They all have personalities. Elephants are very similar. But inside they are very, very different. So when we interact with an elephant, it really depends on its personality. It takes time to get to know and understand them, and training elephants is also very useful for this, to get to know our animals. It's a bit like a classroom. Ikeo, for example, before she became a mother, was a little nervous. She would sometimes be a little nervous and not want to do things. Now she has really matured, and everything she didn't want to do, she does very calmly and serenely. So they go through periods in their lives, just like we do, and their behavior can change. It's very interesting to train them like this, and we get to know their personalities at a given moment. As far as I know, elephants have rarely been domesticated. Of course, there is the story of Hannibal, and during the colonial period in Africa, Vietnamese mahouts went to Africa to train elephants. Even today, there are safaris organized in Africa that use elephants. A little bit to visit Victoria Falls, I think, and our friend Dan, the Swedish expert, went to train some freshly captured elephants, which I believe have been doing the job ever since.
This noble and majestic animal remains independent and autonomous even when domesticated. On this topic, a team of biologists and linguists from the Max Planck Institute recently discovered that wild elephants are one of the world's few known species showing signs of auto-domestication. This phenomenon has only been observed previously in mankind and bonobos. These researchers have identified that all three species have similar behaviors and share certain social characteristics. Indeed, just like bonobos and humans, elephants play and have a real adolescence. They also care for other group members' offspring. Elephants are therefore social beings and display holding back aggressive impulses towards others. Asian or African, the elephant started being domesticated by humans about 4,500 years ago in the Indus Valley. Later on, during the Roman and Carthaginian wars, elephants were used mainly by General Hannibal Barca during his famous crossing of the Alps. To this day, doubts remain about the Asian or African origin of Hannibal's elephants.
There are three theories overall. So there is an elephant that is said to have existed in North Africa and no longer exists today. There is the African elephant, but of the forest, which is smaller, and there is the Asian elephant, which Hannibal could have obtained in some way. In fact, because Alexander already knew about it many years earlier, he was already familiar with this elephant, because he had encountered it in India. They had brought some back with them. There was trade, and at that time Asian elephants were larger than those used in Africa, which were actually forest elephants. To my knowledge, it has not been possible to find any skeletons. So there you have it. There are these three theories, but in any case, these elephants experienced the same great and terrible adventure as Hannibal. He lost some of them. He set off with, I would say, around 40 elephants, but only 10 or so arrived at the end. In the end, he had only one left with a tusk, whose name meant Pierce, I believe. Elephants, let's be clear, were useful at first when they impressed people who didn't know them. The Romans quickly learned how to fight them, in particular, by using pigs that they coated in pitch before setting them on fire and releasing them, screaming toward the elephant. The elephants in turn panicked and crushed their own troops, at which point the mahouts used a small hammer and chisel to cut the elephant's spinal cord and kill the poor animal instantly before it killed too many people on its own side.
Despite the widespread use of elephants in the military throughout most of Asia, particularly in Cambodia, the animal continues to hold mythological significance for Asian populations. We can name Ganesh or Airavata, a magnificent white elephant that serves as the celestial mount of the god Indra. In mythology, Indra is the god of the sky, paradise, lightning, storms, and rain. Airavata is often depicted with either one head and 4 tusks or 3 heads and 6 tusks.
Indra, who is the supreme god in the Vedic period. But it should be noted that these gods of the Vedic period, from 1500 BC to 500 BC, gods such as Indra and Brahma, were demoted in importance during the classical Hindu period. In 500 BC, Brahma is nothing more and nothing less than the one who implements the decisions of Vishnu in Indra, a major god who was not even represented, will find himself represented, and represented with what? With his mount, Airavata, who guards the gates of Svarga. Svarga, this is paradise. And so this white elephant with 4 tusks became a major element. He is also depicted in the form of 2 elephants at Angkor Thom. So we see Indra with these 2 elephants, beside him white elephants, and so the white elephant has become a Khmer legend. Everyone talks about this white elephant here and there in connection with the construction of this or that temple at the same time. Elephant entered Buddhism. In Khmer Buddhism, the white elephant is a symbol of good luck, heralding good news. Queen Maya, mother of the future Buddha, before giving birth to the Buddha, saw in a dream a white elephant flying, usually depicted in pagodas with a lotus flower in its trunk. And this is a very powerful motif in Khmer culture. Moreover, these white elephants, and often pink ones too, see no harm in it, are very often depicted on the doors of pagodas.
According to the legend, Indra's greatest enemy was Vitra, the god of drought and stillness. One day, he stopped the flow of water and rain. Using his trunk, Airavata helped by drinking all the water from the world's lower region and projecting it onto the clouds. Indra intervened and made it rain. This sacred rain connected the worlds of the skies, the earth, and the underground. Therefore, it linked the worlds of the gods and humankind. Indra and his brave elephant Airavata struck down the demon Vitra. This myth is well known and respected in Cambodia, to the extent that the elephant is more revered than any other animal. As a result, elephants cannot be captured like boars or buffaloes. The capture of an elephant is ritualized to avoid offending the gods.
There is a presence of elephants, a physical presence of the pachyderm, of course, but also a mythical presence. And to get an idea of this mythical presence, we need to look at Elul's thesis, the customs of elephant hunters in Western Cambodia. Elul describes the Khoi minority, a significant minority of nearly 300,000 peoples living in present-day Thailand in the regions of Preah Kampong Thom, and the Kulen Plateau. The Khoi minority in Cambodia are great elephant catchers who naturally take care of capturing wild elephants, training them, and using them for various tasks. This custom of elephant catching is extremely precise. You don't catch an elephant the way you would catch a wild boar or goat. Not at all. Elephant has an almost divine personality, and one must treat this god with respect. So there is a whole extraordinarily precise ritual described by Elul in his thesis, which I believe he wrote in 1983. It is an extremely precise ritual that allows one to go through the different stages from this point of view. So there is an important phenomenon also found in the Mondulkiri region, which has been very well described in a series of accounts. The myth of the elephant. Elephant is a god, cannot allow the elephant to reproduce in captivity. This is an absolutely essential point. So you have to capture the wild elephant, train it, and then naturally you can use it. So that would be a bit like the mythological background that we find among minorities. And there is no doubt that it was originally found among the Khmer people. Do we have any traces among the Khmer people themselves, the minorities, whether they be Tampuan, Jarai, Phnom Kui? Until very recently, even today, we still have this textuality among the Khmer people. What do we have? Among the Khmer people, we have something very interesting that has never been emphasized. A king from the 9th century, early 10th century, or rather the 9th century, named Jayavarman III. Poor Jayavarman III. He was ill-advised to be the son of King Jayavarman II, who was the creator of the Angkorian monarchy in a realm, but also mythical sense. This famous King Jayavarman III did not leave much of a mark on history. We do not have any heroic deeds characterizing his exploits. On the other hand, something very interesting is that we have 5 inscriptions describing wild elephant hunts. Royal wild elephant hunting was a very popular sport now We might ask ourselves why this king, who is not mentioned elsewhere, is well known for these elephant hunts. We have been able to demonstrate that there are two things in this inscription that relate to all this. The first thing is related to hunting itself, the second to the phenomenon of ownership, assertion, and legitimization of property. How? Why? And here we come to a very interesting point that is central to Khmer civilization. King Jayavarman III, for example, when he went elephant hunting, traveled with his entire court and administration. Where did he go? To the edge of the civilized world. Elephants are not found in rice fields. They are found in forests, and forests are unknown territory. So this king traveled with his court, symbolically moving his capital, so to speak, since everyone and everything that matters goes with him. And they practice this elephant hunting. So Aimonier, Etienne Aimonier, whom everyone despises, but whom no one quotes, and whom everyone has conscientiously plundered, tells a story in ancient Cambodia. It is about a modest Khoi woodcutter from the Khoi ethnic group in western Cambodia who goes to help a king, an ancient king. We don't know exactly which one. The king, he helps the king in his elephant hunt. He helps him so well that the Khoi woodcutter, an ordinary guy, who is also part of a small ethnic minority, he's not even Khmer, he visits the king in Angkor and suddenly becomes a dignitary. How does that happen? The region in which this hunt took place, and this is very important, is called Sangka. Sangka is a district in the Surin region. Surin and Buriram are Khmer lands that are now part of Thailand. Sangka, and he will receive from the king the dignity of Sangka Pura. Sangka Pura, meaning the city, the town. In other words, there is a political lesson to be learned from this legend. The first is that a simple fellow, an unimportant individual from an ethnic minority, finds himself from one day to the next because he rendered a service to the king during a royal hunt, a dignitary. The second thing is that the king reaches the edge of his kingdom, in other words, the lands that belong to this civilization. The edge is the unknown. It is the forest. In other words, the king will, through this elephant hunt, achieve junction between the two, between the known, cultivated land, river, and the unknown, which in Khmer is called Sri for the river and Prey for the forest. This is a major contrast that we find within it. And the third thing is what is called the naming. He gives this place a name through the elephant hunt. So what does all this mean? How do we know all these episodes? We know about these episodes through inscriptions, and there are several kinds of inscriptions, several types. First, there are royal inscriptions, which come directly from the will of the sovereign. These are not royal inscriptions. They are not royal inscriptions. What we call Saka. What is Saka? These are inscriptions that specify the origin and history of land ownership. They do not come from the king. They come from families. And it is precisely these families who will use the king's travels to prove their relationship with him. These inscriptions which recount this hunt and these royal elephant hunts are fundamental. This does not mean that royal elephant hunts did not take place. They did take place, and they took place more often than we think. But now these families used these hunts to promote their possessions on a particular piece of land in a country where there was no land registry, where there had never been one. So we are going to propose a role for this family and a form of domination. In other words, we have a double movement. First, the king, through this hunt for a wild elephant, through the hunt, or rather the capture, training, and release of the elephant. Capture, training, and release. Through this hunt, the king will push back, first increasing the size of the royal domain, and pushing back the boundary between the rice field and the forest, between the known and the unknown. And at the same time, for the families on this spatial side, something temporal will be added, the past and the present, combining the past, the era of hunting, when the king met the families in question, and the present, the assertion of ownership and sovereignty over a given territory. This is how Jayavarman III's hunts enabled and played an eminent political role. So why the elephant? It's very simple. The elephant is in the forest, and the wild elephant can become a domestic elephant. It effectively becomes a domestic elephant. And the captured wild elephant becoming a domestic elephant allows for the creation of this myth of it. Royal hunts, on one hand, expanding the royal domain and truly creating property and domesticating a territory.
The domestication of the elephant led to the discovery of new territories. Indeed, it is on elephants' back that men easily cross the most inextricable forests. The elephant surveyed and thus demarked the royal territories, particularly those of the Khmer Empire. Auguste Pavie, explorer, diplomat, and senior civil servant, made it possible to identify these territories, each with their ethnic group. Khmer people's ancient practices regarding elephants lasted several centuries. These have lasted, in fact, much longer than we believe.
Let's not forget how long we've known about these ethnic minorities. Pavie began exploring these territories in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And there isn't much difference between Angkorian Cambodia and 20th century Cambodia in that regard. Things are really starting to change today, and they will continue to change in the 20th century. Elephants were still widely used not so long ago. I have seen photos of the Khmer Rouge resistance in the 1980s showing Khmer soldiers riding elephants. That still existed. Things are really starting to change today and began to change in the 1990s and 2000s. There has been a real change with an increase in population, the end of these ultimately wild lands, and the marginalization of these particular practices. There is a big difference now.
These marginalized ancestral practices still happen today, mainly thanks to Airavata, an association that works towards preserving elephants alongside a local ethnicity from Ratanakiri's region. This association goals is to keep these traditions alive as long as possible with the mahouts' help.
All of our staffs and mahouts are from the Broi ethnic group, which is the people who live around us. It is one of the 12 ethnic groups in Ratanakiri. The Broi are animists, meaning that until very recently they had an intimate connection with nature. Well, nature in Cambodia has suffered quite a bit, so people sometimes don't know where they stand. It's also a turning point, in fact, with Cambodians becoming increasingly present here. People are speaking more and more Khmer, which is good in itself. It's important that they feel part of the country. On the other hand, they sometimes tend to want to hide their origins, their traditions, the way they used to dress, and so we at Airavata try to convince them otherwise. We have visitors who come from the other side of the world to discover not only the elephants, but also the culture of our mahouts, and the fact that a 52 kilograms man can control a 5-ton animal is a legitimate source of pride, especially when it's done with skill and kindness. I've been in Ratanakiri for a long time. I've been going there since the mid-1990s. I know the minority peoples well, but before I was more with the Jarai and the Kathia. The Broi are more recent. We've been here in Kading for 8 years. So we have to get to know each other, which is sometimes complicated at first, because these are people who have never worked outside of the fields or hunting with their elephants in the forest. So learning to respect schedules and constraints is not easy. It takes time to get to know each other, and there have been ups and downs. Now we have a kind of balance, so I'm quite happy and proud. As you can see, we laugh a lot and have a lot of fun. We try to be professional, but we never lose sight of the fact that it's good to be together and joke around together.
If the Airavata Association has integrated the Brau ethnic group, it also sponsors surrounding villages by adopting a social aspect in its daily activities.
Now we work in harmony with the 3 surrounding villages, which are beginning to understand the importance of preserving this forest. In Airavata, we also have a social aspect. We came with doctors. We have a project with the Dental University of Nantes, so we have friends who are in business in Phnom Penh, and from time to time they have things that can no longer be sold. That's how we got 5,000 bottles of shampoo, which we distributed to everyone around us who now have the silkiest hair in Cambodia thanks to Petrol Han, a French brand. So we try to live in harmony, not to be seen as people who are having fun, rich people having fun with their elephants in the forest. Now we see that Cambodians are increasingly understanding our approach, and that is a source of pride for us.
The growth of the population, the modernization of infrastructures, and the economic development of the country have gradually distanced Cambodians from elephant-related traditions. For Airavata, reconnecting the elephant with the Khmer culture is a must.
For Airavata, it is important to reconnect elephants with Khmer culture, and that is also what we want to promote. For us, it is very important to reconnect Cambodians with this animal, which is emblematic of Cambodian culture, history, and religion. Here, as everyone knows, there was the Khmer Rouge, there was the Vietnamese occupation, there were some pretty terrible times, and people naturally turned to new things related to survival. And now, in fact, we are very much in a consumer society, and Airavata is trying to remind people that there are things that are important, that are ancestral, and that it would be a shame to lose.
In fact, we take care of elephants because we fear that one day there will be no more elephants, which would mean we would lose our culture, as elephants are deeply intertwined with our history. You can see the bas-reliefs in the temples in Siem Reap, as well as in other provinces. Elephants and humans are very close. Domestic elephants live with humans, just like members of the family. This is what drives us to continue working and caring for the elephants. Even when faced with difficulties and worries, we must strive to work and take care of the elephant. Additionally, the province of Ratanakiri is renowned for its collaboration with tourists in ecotourism. When tourists arrive in the province, they seek to visit the local communities, houses, and villages. There are river trips and elephant viewing tours. However, if there are no more domesticated elephants in the province, it would create a significant gap in tourism. Therefore, we work in tourism, offering tours and accommodations, while also ensuring the well-being of the elephants, so that we can provide activities with them. It's a lot of work, but it's essential for supporting the province and the Ministry of Tourism.
It is important to reconnect the people and this mythical animal in Cambodia, as it is crucial for preserving traditions. Additionally, reconnecting the animal with the forest is also essential for success. Despite being domesticated, it is vital for the animal's health and well-being to have access to the jungle in order to fulfill its basic needs.
As I said earlier, in order to be a complete elephant, or at least a healthy elephant, an elephant really needs the forest. That's also why we chose this location next to the Kachin forest, because we are only 300 meters away from it. It is a 150-hectare residual forest, but it allows us to feed our 4 elephants almost all year round. There are times during the dry season when there is almost nothing to eat, and sometimes people burn the forest. I have to say that without our 4 elephants, this residual forest, which is residual because it is quite enclosed with ups and downs, would have disappeared without our elephants. With our elephant project, the forest is home to a wide variety of plants that the elephant will spend its entire youth learning to recognize with its mother. We saw this clearly, especially after the birth of little Noel. Her mother, Ikeo, preferred the red roots of certain shrubs, which she ate in large quantities. Elephants know exactly what they need at different times of the year, and the forest, with all the variety it offers, provides them with a truly balanced diet that they cannot get in zoos or even in camps far from the forest. There, elephants are fed the leftovers from intensive farming, pineapple tops and sugarcane. It's very bad to give sugarcane to an elephant on a regular basis. It's like feeding a child candy. On the other hand, as a reward, it's fine. Elephants love it, but it shouldn't be a normal part of their diet.
Becoming an elephant owner cannot be improvised overnight. Such an adventure can only begin with awareness. Present for years in Cambodia and imbued with this very particular culture, Chenda and Pierre-Yves Clay tell us about their beginnings.
Well, we got into elephants a little bit by accident because, well, by accident, yes and no. We are tourism professionals, adventure tourism. Professionals. Since the 1990s, we have been working in tourism in Cambodia, particularly in Ratnakiri. I specialized in jungle guiding for a long time. So I started my training in the French army and perfected my skills with French tour operators who sent me clients. And so inevitably working in Ratnakiri for a long time, we saw elephants. We sometimes worked with elephants with the people who owned them, but it wasn't our specialty at all. And then one day, someone we knew came to tell us that if we didn't do anything, the last elephants in the province would disappear. So we started by buying an elephant named Ikea. At first, we approached her with a little worry, but then we got to know Ikea, who is an adorable elephant. And then, buying one elephant leads to buying another elephant.
Year after year, the project expanded in terms of territory and grew in the number of people working there. The purpose of this human-scale adventure is to sustain its activities and provide a vital and minimal space for the elephants.
Here we are at the entrance to Airavata, which covers an area of about 8 hectares, and a forest of 150 hectares right next to it. It goes as far as the Kating River, and extends beyond the Kating River on the other side. From here to the ridge, we have access to water all year round, so we can wash our elephants. We also plant banana trees and sugarcane, and we can house our staff here. Some of them come from villages more than 15 kilometers away. And when you know the state of the roads, in fact, wet laterite is like ice, and our guys often have motorcycle accidents. So it's better to live here. We are starting to have families move in. The widow of our former mahout Katui is also going to move in. We have about 12 people working on site, 9 mahouts for only 4 elephants, plus staff who do a little gardening and welcome guests when the others are busy. The elephants, so from a technical point of view, we have a technical area where we train the elephants every day. It's a small corral to manage people coming in and out around the elephants, for safety reasons. And then we had a small traditional village of the Broyo ethnic group, but unfortunately it didn't survive COVID, and the termites very well. So now we're thinking about repairing what we can because a lot of people are asking us if they can stay here, to live more in contact with the elephants, to do volunteer work. So we're moving a little bit in that direction. There are also problems sometimes, which are related to inconsistency. It turns out that there is an illegal field in the protected forest, but we can't make people move, so we're trying to offer them a swap for some land we've bought, which is legal, so that they can leave this land vacant and we can reforest it. So we are making efforts to reforest. We are buying endemic trees. We planted them 4 years ago. We planted more than 2,000 at the entrance to our 8 hectares there. And they are doing quite well.
Gradually, the organization expanded by taking in mature elephants and embracing a newborn. Each elephant, whether adult, adolescent, or infant, possesses its unique and own personality and sensitivity.
So at Airavata, we have 4 elephants. We have a female named Ikeo, who is now 41 years old. She was the first elephant we had. Then there's Bogva, her boyfriend, so to speak, a boyfriend who weighs 5 tons. He is the largest domesticated elephant in Cambodia. Then we have Kamsen, who is a little older, around 50 years old. He is a little smaller, weighing 3 tons 8, and we have the famous Noel, who was born almost 2 years ago. She is a little female, who was born on December 25th, hence her name. An elephant reaches adulthood at around 15 years of age. They reach sexual maturity well before that. But we won't talk about that. Psychologically, elephants reach adulthood at around 15 years of age, as do they in terms of size. Once again, an elephant's brain is quite similar to that of a human, I believe, and I don't want to say anything stupid, that it has 257 billion neurons. That's quite a lot. So the elephant is a somewhat paradoxical animal. Because when you see it like that, it's a very placid animal. But a lot is going on inside its brain. And it's a very sensitive animal. I remember, for example, Ikeo, who saw her lover Bhagva undergo surgery on his temple next to her, and she lost her appetite for 3 days. With a baby elephant, it's different. They're a bit like puppies, they play, but adults are very placid. On the other hand, especially males, their behavior can change in a fraction of a second. This makes males dangerous, unlike females in general.
Within the association, the elephants benefit from training and educational games that allow for both physical and intellectual engagement of the animal. Since they are smart beings, it is necessary to continuously stimulate their brains. Practical exercises are inspired by both Cambodian traditions and modern techniques.
Knowledge has been passed on. We have made a lot of progress ourselves, as have our mahouts, and we are quite proud of the level we have been able to achieve. A level that must always be improved in any case, because elephants need the best level of care and training. Training these elephants is actually done with positive reinforcement, just like with dogs, except that we replace treats or kibble with tons of bananas or sugarcane. And the brews are mahouts, at least those who have stayed with us. Because of course there are sometimes staff changes. Unfortunately, some people die, and some people have to change jobs. But they were interested in what we had, everything we could show them, everything Dan could show them, and the training of our elephants moved to another level. Training elephants is very important. It's a bit like when you have a class. It allows you to get to know the students better. When you teach them to lift their trunk or lift their foot, all these things that will be useful later when the vet arrives, you understand your animal better, its weaknesses, and its strength. There are some that we thought were just big bullies and not necessarily smart, but well, it was the opposite, and with training, they will develop their intellect. And it's exciting to put them through all this and see the elephants in my house evolve. And now we have little Noelle, whom we'll talk about later. At her age, she has already started to lift her trunk and learn how to climb tree trunks and all that using small pieces of sugarcane. So first of all, Airavata is the last place in Cambodia where Khmer traditions surrounding elephants are still upheld. That means we continue to work with our elephants. We ride them. We organize elephant rides. In the forest, we do it from time to time. We have them pull logs when we need to reorganize the camp. When Noelle realized she could pass under the coral fences, we pulled large logs which the elephants brought, and then we trained them every day. In fact, it's more of an intellectual training in quotation marks, where we teach them to raise their trunks on command, to lift their feet, to give their feet, to do circles. It's a bit like the cadre noir de Saumur in its Cambodian version in relative terms. It allows us to develop our elephants' intelligence and have closer contact with them. It also allows us to get to know them better and prepare them for veterinary visits, which is very important when the vet arrives, and there is a problem, whether it's an eye, an abscess, or something else. Sometimes elephants injure themselves in the forest. They can pierce something with a bamboo stick, and if the problem gets worse and we can't fix it, a veterinarian will come, and he has to be safe. That's where this training comes into its own. We adapt a little to demand, but there is one thing we will not compromise on, and that is we do not want to give in to the false arguments of the anti-elephant riding Taliban. These are people who tell us what is wrong and what is right, generally without any scientific basis. I often hear people say that riding on elephants' backs destroys their spines. Well, you should know that the elephant's saddle doesn't touch the spine. It's at least 20 centimeters away from the spine. It rests on the rib cage, which is protected. Of course, you can hurt an elephant by making it work too long with loads that are too heavy, but that's not our goal at all. Our elephants are part of the family, and we want them to be healthy. It's very important for them to get physical exercise, especially the large males. They can have periods of aggression, which I have experienced firsthand. Sometimes it's important for them to exercise physically to be more balanced. So that's where the walks in the forest come in. They're never very long walks, usually 2 or 3 hours maximum, and in a natural environment that won't hurt the elephant's feet. We don't make him walk on asphalt. There isn't any, but he does climb slopes and go down slopes, which is very good for his muscles, his balance, and also for the forest. Because elephants eat, and since they eat 18 hours a day, they also defecate a lot. And since they digest very little, they transport seeds over long distances, which is very good for regenerating forests.
Quite counterintuitively to what one might expect, elephants in captivity actually live much longer than those in the wild. Every ache and ailment of a domesticated elephant is attended to, and any illnesses are treated by veterinarians. Their lifespan is therefore significantly increased.
The lifespan of an elephant is a bit like that of a human being, and it also depends on the life that elephant has lived. So an elephant that has worked very hard in the woods pulling things out, which may have injured itself, broken its legs. Well, breaking a leg on an elephant can't be repaired. And otherwise an elephant that has worked hard and become weak is a bit like a miner. It will have a shorter life. So, on average, an elephant in the wild lives around 60 years, while a domesticated elephant lives longer. This is because we take care of any little injuries it may have, such as eye infections, so the record for a domesticated elephant is 86 years in a circus. So this may make some people cringe, but in circuses, they took extremely good care of the elephant's health. Elephants are always on wooden slats where urine and feces are removed. So the elephant doesn't get macerated, which is very bad for them to be in their urine and feces. Inevitably, an elephant in a circus costs a lot of money because a lot of time and effort goes into training them. So they always took great care of their elephant's health. And the record, to my knowledge, is 86 years in a circus. Otherwise, they can die from the age of 50 onwards, depending on the food they have been given, and so on, just like humans. We have the veterinary problems that we face most often, which aren't really diseases. So there are things that happen from time to time. Elephants can have blood in their salt or parasites. So it's very important to treat our elephants as we treat humans, at least once a year or every 6 months. We give them anti-parasitic tablets, which we usually put in small pumpkins filled with tablets so that they swallow them all at once. The idea is that we first give them an empty pumpkin, a pumpkin with the tablets, and then another empty pumpkin. That way it goes down easily. It's a strategy that took us a long time to develop because they often spit. They're smart. As for illnesses, our elephants haven't been sick, except for diarrhea, and generally when an elephant has diarrhea, we leave it alone in the forests, so it can eat the plants that suit it, and after a day or two, the elephant is back on its feet. No problem. So it's naturopathy, and otherwise we have injuries. We have elephants in musth, which is the period when their testosterone levels increase 100-fold, at least for the males. They are tied up for 3 months, because otherwise they destroy everything in their path. So the elephants there injure themselves. They are in a constant state of rage. They kick and headbutt, and so they injure themselves. They damage their nails, and then, after the rut, when the elephant has calmed down a bit, we take care of it, repairing that. Sometimes in the forest, people cut bamboo, which leaves sharp points that pierce their flesh and can cause abscesses, so we treat things like that. After mating too, as mating is repeated and intense, poor Akeo last time had her back all damaged by Bogva's legs and tusks. We had to treat it with compresses containing various products, recommended by our veterinarian. But so far we've been lucky. Our elephants aren't sick. But I think that's really because they live in the wild.
Often, Westerners have misconceptions about the domestication of the elephant and their role in Cambodia. Even today, false ideas, lacking accurate knowledge, are often spread on social media.
Things that foreigners imagine, in fact, about the mistreatment that elephants are supposedly systematically subjected to. It seems that in order to ride an elephant, you have to torture it for years. The reality is quite different. At Airavata, we continue to work with our elephants, and in the Western world, we are sometimes seen as emulating Genghis Khan. People don't understand the cultural and historical importance of elephants in Cambodia. They built their country with elephants. They won or lost their battles with elephants. Elephants are everywhere. They are in art. They are in art. They are in cabinet making. They are in pagodas. They are in religion. They are in oral culture. And the disappearance of elephants is something that could be, well, that is very, how can I put it? For the country, it would really be a loss, a terrible loss. That's why Airavata is currently working through a difficult period, a pivotal period. In fact, there are only 50 or 60 domestic elephants left in Cambodia, and the whale was a blessing because no baby had been born in captivity for 30 years. And then another one was born from the love between a wild male elephant and a domestic female elephant. So all of this is a very good sign, but we are still a long way from having a sustainable population. And we will have to think about how all of this can be organized. But yes, the problem we have with the West is that I had given up. Chenda and I generally address the Asian community, who understand what we are doing, because it's part of their DNA. It's part of their culture. It's normal for everyone to ride elephants in Cambodia. Whereas in Europe, we are seen as bloodthirsty brutes who get rich off the backs of elephants. If buying elephants made you rich, everyone would know about it. On the contrary, it is something that is particularly costly in terms of time, care, and everything else. In fact, since we've had elephants, that's all we think about. Our family life has been turned upside down. As soon as an elephant has a small problem, especially Noelle, our youngest, we rush to consult the veterinarian. We are lucky to have very good Cambodian veterinarians at the Phnom Tamao zoos, with whom we have been able to establish a very good working relationship. And they are very responsive. So when Noelle or her mother have watery eyes or their tongues seem to be swelling, a few messages are all it takes to let us know. And that's very important to us. And that's thanks to the NGO Wildlife Alliance, with whom we have a close relationship.
We had 2 or 3 problems with people who obviously didn't understand. The problem with raising funds, especially in France for Cambodia, is that people are a little out of touch. They're a little distant when it comes to the relationship between humans and animals. So you have to take the time to explain to people what we do, so that they can understand it simply and see how it's relevant to them.
To ensure elephants' needs are met, the Airavatas Association consistently organizes events and seeks support from all those with goodwill in a spirit of openness.
So people can help us by paying for trees, sending money orders, making transfers to help us, especially during the dry season when we don't have enough food for the animals and have to pay for it. Tourism has been very bad since COVID, never came back, so we've been making an effort. My wife and I own 2 hotels, which used to fill the gaps caused by the elephants. Now, the hotels are not doing so well, so any help is welcome. Financial aid is of course essential, but so are people with real skills. Veterinarians, behaviorists, forestry experts. All these people are welcome to contact us because we need them. We ourselves have learned a little on the job. We learn every day, and it's exciting, and we're happy to talk to people who have skills that we don't have, and that can be useful to our elephant.
Elephants are creatures of earth and water, air and fire, night and day, death and life. They are creatures of memory and oblivion. Like us, they are creatures of thoughts.